Everyone, we want to thank you for wrapping up your weekend with us. I'm Ariel Mallory. We're glad you chose Fox 10 News at 9. And first tonight at 9, it was a violent Sunday across Mobile County with 2 deadly shootings, 3 people dead. First in Pritchard, the Mobile County Sheriff's Office responded to an early morning shooting, leaving 1 man dead. In Mobile, a double homicide. Police responded to a home on Ross Street where 2 people were found shot to death. Mobile Police Chief William Jackson was on scene this afternoon and calls this violence senseless. An active scene Sunday afternoon in Mobile with a heavy police presence. MPD officers lining several streets near Ross Street and Bernice Hudson Drive. 2 people are dead after what police say was a domestic-related incident.
Welcome to Truly Criminal Chronicles. On June 8, 2025, 2 gunshots in Mobile, Alabama left 2 people dead and 1 brother traumatized for life. The first call came in at 8:47 p.m. A neighbor reported hearing screaming, then gunfire from the McDuffie residence on Ross Street. When police arrived at the modest brick home, they found a scene that would haunt them for years. 52-year-old Tracy McDuffie lay motionless in her living room, a single gunshot wound to her chest. Blood pooled beneath her body, staining the carpet where she'd collapsed. Just 15 feet away, her 25-year-old son Brandon McDuffie was also dead, killed by a bullet to his torso. 2 bodies, 2 victims, but only 1 killer. How well do you really know the people living under your own roof? The person sitting across from you at dinner tonight, could they be capable of murder? Could you? The McDuffie home had been the site of what neighbors described as a typical Sunday evening. Family dinner. Casual conversation. Normal life in suburban Alabama. But within minutes, that normalcy exploded into a bloodbath that would rock the tight-knit Mobile community to its core. Here's what makes this case so chilling. This wasn't a home invasion. No stranger broke in with evil intentions. No robbery gone wrong. No random act of violence. This was family destroying family. Mother, son, and brother locked in a deadly triangle that could only end one way. Officers found the murder weapon still warm on the floor. They found evidence of a struggle. They found a family meal half finished on the dining room table. But they also found something else. Brent McDuffie, the eldest son, standing over both bodies with his own smoking gun in his hand. So here's the question that kept investigators awake that night. Which son was the killer, and which was the victim? Was Brandon McDuffie a cold-blooded murderer who shot his own mother, only to meet his own violent end? Or was Brent McDuffie a calculated killer who eliminated both his mother and brother in one deadly rampage? The truth is more complex than either scenario, because in the McDuffie house that night, victim and killer weren't separate categories. They overlapped in ways that challenge everything we think we know about family, loyalty, and survival. Neighbors gathered on Ross Street, watching as body bags were wheeled out of the home where they'd seen birthday parties, holiday gatherings, and backyard barbecues for years. They whispered the same questions you're probably asking right now. How does a family dinner become a double homicide? What could possibly drive someone to kill their own mother? And when faced with that horror, what would you do to survive? Hit like if you're ready for a story that will change how you see family dynamics forever. Because what you're about to learn about the McDuffie family will make you question every assumption you've ever made about the people closest to you. The bodies told one story, but the truth? The truth requires us to understand who these people really were. If you had driven down Ross Street before June 8th, 2025, the McDuffie home would have looked like everything right with suburban America. The well-maintained brick house sat on a quiet corner lot, complete with manicured lawn and seasonal decorations that changed with the holidays. Neighbors knew they could count on Tracy McDuffie for anything: a cup of sugar, a ride to the doctor, or a casserole when someone was sick. At Spring Hill Baptist Church, Tracy occupied the 3rd pew every Sunday morning without fail. Pastor Williams remembered her as the woman who stayed after service to stack chairs and sweep floors. She volunteered for the annual food drive, helped organize the church picnic, and never missed a potluck dinner. She was the kind of person who made everyone feel welcome, recalled Martha Henderson, who sat next to Tracy in the church choir for 12 years. When new families visited our congregation, Tracy was always the first to introduce herself and invite them to lunch. The local community center knew Tracy as a reliable volunteer during their holiday toy drives. She'd arrive with boxes of donated items and spend hours sorting gifts for underprivileged children. Staff members describe her as soft-spoken but dependable, someone who showed up when she said she would. Social media painted the same rosy picture. Tracy's Facebook page overflowed with family photos, birthday celebrations, graduation parties, holiday gatherings around a beautifully set dining table. Her posts radiated maternal pride, especially when celebrating her son's achievements. "So proud of my boys," she'd write beneath photos of Brent and Brandon at family barbecues. The images showed smiling faces, arms draped around each other's shoulders, the very definition of family harmony. Local shop owners on Government Street knew Tracy as the polite customer who always asked about their families. At the grocery store, she'd chat with cashiers about their children's school activities. At the pharmacy, she'd inquire about the pharmacist's elderly mother. She remembered everyone's name, said Angela Rodriguez, who worked at the corner market where Tracy shopped weekly. She'd ask about my daughter's soccer games and remembered to follow up the next time she came in. You don't find people like that anymore. The McDuffie residents hosted neighborhood gatherings that became local traditions. Their annual 4th of July barbecue drew families from 3 blocks away. Children played in the backyard, while adults shared stories on the front porch. Everyone agreed the McDuffies knew how to bring people together. When Brandon graduated from high school, neighbors recalled the celebration spilling onto the street. When Brent landed a new job, Tracy's pride was visible to anyone who'd listen. She spoke about her sons the way loving mothers do, with complete devotion and endless optimism about their futures. From the outside, the McDuffie family represented everything Americans aspire to achieve: stability, love, community involvement, and genuine care for others. But every perfect family has secrets. Behind the McDuffie family's public facade lay a toxic dynamic that had been poisoning their household for over 2 decades. Tracy McDuffie didn't hide her favoritism. She celebrated it openly. On social media, she referred to Brent as her early Christmas gift, a phrase that appeared in dozens of posts over the years. When Brent accomplished anything, no matter how small, Tracy's enthusiasm reached every corner of their social circle. "My wonderful son Brent got a promotion at work." She'd post, accompanied by 3 heart emojis and multiple exclamation points. "So blessed to have such an amazing young man as my firstborn." Brandon's achievements received different treatment. When he completed his GED after dropping out of high school, Tracy's post read simply, "Brandon finished his education requirements. No emojis, no exclamation points." The financial favoritism was even more obvious. Brent received a reliable used car for his 18th birthday, a Honda Civic that Tracy purchased outright. Brandon turned 18 to a card with $50 cash inside. When Brent needed money for work clothes, Tracy handed over her credit card without hesitation. When Brandon asked for help with job interview attire, she suggested he shop at Goodwill. Family dinners revealed the emotional hierarchy with painful clarity. Tracy would ask Brent detailed questions about his day, his goals, his relationships. She'd listen intently to his responses, offering advice and encouragement. Brandon might receive a polite, "How was your day?" but rarely follow-up questions. If he tried to share stories or concerns, Tracy's attention would drift to her phone or household tasks. Extended family noticed the imbalance during holiday gatherings. Tracy's sister later admitted that watching the different treatment made her uncomfortable. Tracy would light up when Brent walked into a room, she recalled. With Brandon, it was like she was just being polite to someone else's child. The preferential treatment extended to consequences for misbehavior. When Brent came home drunk at 19, Tracy worried about his safety and made him promise to call for rides. When Brandon came home intoxicated at 21, she screamed about embarrassing the family and grounded him for 2 weeks. Brandon began withdrawing from family activities around age 16. He'd skip dinner to eat alone in his room. He'd find excuses to avoid family photos. During gatherings, he'd position himself on the edges of conversations, observing but rarely participating. Friends from high school remember Brandon's growing bitterness about his home life. He'd say stuff like, "My mom wishes I was never born," or "She only had one kid as far as she's concerned," recalled his former classmate David Chun. We thought he was exaggerating, but now, the psychological damage accumulated over years. Brandon struggled to maintain steady employment, partly because he'd become convinced he was destined to fail. He'd start jobs with enthusiasm, but quit within months, often citing feeling unappreciated or invisible to supervisors. Mental health professionals weren't part of the McDuffie family's world. When Brandon's moods darkened and his isolation deepened, Tracy attributed it to laziness rather than depression. She complained to neighbors that Brandon needed to try harder and stop feeling sorry for himself. By his mid-20s, Brandon had developed a worldview centered on resentment. He believed his mother's love was finite, and Brent had claimed it all. He believed he was fundamentally flawed, unworthy of attention or affection. Most dangerously, he believed his pain was invisible to everyone who mattered. Comment below if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, because Brandon's story shows how childhood emotional neglect can destroy lives. As 2025 began, Brandon's mental state reached its most dangerous point. The anger he'd suppressed for years was demanding release. June 8th, 2025 started like any other Sunday in the McDuffie household. Tracy prepared her usual family dinner: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans, while her sons settled into their familiar roles around the kitchen table. The conversation began innocently enough. Tracy mentioned that Brent had been promoted to shift supervisor at his job, her voice filled with maternal pride. She talked about how impressed his boss was with his leadership skills, how he'd always been such a responsible young man. Brandon sat quietly, picking at his food, until Tracy made an offhand comment that would change everything. "You know, Brandon, you should ask your brother for advice about finding steady work. Brent's always been so good at keeping jobs." 25 years of accumulated resentment crystallized in that single sentence. Brandon's fork clattered against his plate. "Why don't you just say what you really mean, Mom?" Tracy looked surprised. "What are you talking about? You think I'm a failure. You think Brent's perfect and I'm worthless." "Brandon, that's not true. I just think." "You just think what?" "That I'm too stupid to figure out life without my perfect older brother holding my hand." The room temperature seemed to drop. Brent shifted uncomfortably in his chair, recognizing the familiar pattern of Brandon's anger building. But this time was different. This time, something had fundamentally shifted in Brandon's eyes. "You've never believed in me," Brandon continued, his voice getting louder. "Not once in my entire life. Everything I do, you compare to him. Every conversation we have, you find a way to tell me how much better he is." Tracy's defensive instincts kicked in. "I love both of you equally. You're being ridiculous." "Equally," Brandon laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "When's the last time you posted about being proud of me? When's the last time you brag about anything I accomplished?" "I post about you." "Bullshit. You posted about my GED like you were announcing a dentist appointment. But when Golden Boy here gets a promotion, it's like he cured cancer." Brent finally spoke up. "Brandon, calm down. She didn't mean anything by it. Don't you dare tell me to calm down." Brandon's voice cracked with rage. "You don't get it because you've never had to live in someone else's shadow your entire life." Tracy stood up from the table, her patience exhausted. "That's enough. You're 25 years old, Brandon. Stop blaming everyone else for your problems." Those words, "stop blaming everyone else," hit Brandon like a physical blow. In his mind, they confirmed every terrible thing he believed about himself. His own mother saw him as a failure, a complainer, someone who couldn't take responsibility for his life. The rational part of Brandon's brain shut down completely. Years of suppressed rage, depression, and feelings of worthlessness crashed together in a perfect storm of psychological destruction. He wasn't thinking about consequences or morality or love. He was thinking about pain. The pain of being dismissed, ignored, and emotionally abandoned by the one person who was supposed to love him unconditionally. Brandon stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward with a crash. "Where are you going?" Tracy asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to his bedroom with mechanical precision, opened his closet, and retrieved the .38 caliber revolver he'd purchased months earlier for protection. His hands weren't shaking. His breathing was steady. The chaos in his mind had been replaced by a cold, deadly clarity. When he returned to the kitchen, gun in hand, Tracy's expression shifted from annoyance to terror. "Brandon, what are you doing?" In that moment, 25 years of love, resentment, and desperation collided. The son who had desperately wanted his mother's approval was about to destroy the only person whose love he'd ever truly needed. When Brandon returned to the kitchen holding the .38 revolver, time seemed to freeze. Tracy's eyes widened in horror as she registered what was happening. "Brandon, please." The first gunshot echoed through the house at 8:43 p.m. Tracy McDuffie collapsed instantly, the bullet piercing her chest. She hit the kitchen floor with a sound that would haunt her surviving son forever. Blood began pooling beneath her body as life drained from the woman who had raised both boys in that very room. Brent had been in the bathroom when he heard the gunshot. The sound sent ice through his veins. He knew immediately what had happened, though his mind refused to accept it. He ran toward the kitchen, calling out for his mother. What he found changed him forever. His mother lay motionless on the linoleum floor, her eyes staring at nothing. Blood stained her church dress, the same yellow dress she'd worn to morning service just hours earlier. Standing over her body was Brandon, still holding the smoking gun, his face completely devoid of emotion. "Oh God, Brandon, what did you do?" Brent whispered, dropping to his knees beside his mother's body. He pressed his fingers to her neck, desperately searching for a pulse that wasn't there. Her skin was already cooling. Tracy McDuffie, the woman who had volunteered at church and brought casseroles to sick neighbors, was gone. Brandon watched his brother's grief with cold detachment. The rage that had consumed him minutes earlier had been replaced by something far more dangerous: complete emotional numbness. He felt nothing as he watched Brent sob over their mother's body. "She never loved me anyway," Brandon said, his voice flat and emotionless. Brent looked up at his brother in disbelief. "Are you insane? She's our mother. Your mother. Never mind." That's when Brandon raised the gun again, this time pointing it directly at Brent's chest. In that split second, Brent understood with crystal clarity that he was about to die. His brother, the same person he'd grown up with, shared a room with, played video games with, was going to kill him right there beside their mother's body. Survival instinct kicked in. Brent lunged sideways, reaching for his own concealed carry weapon that he'd holstered under his jacket. Years of target practice at the local shooting range had prepared him for this moment, though he'd never imagined using those skills against his own family. Brandon fired first, but Brent's movement caused the bullet to miss by inches, embedding itself in the kitchen cabinet behind him. Brent's return shot was precise and fatal. The bullet struck Brandon in the torso, sending him stumbling backward against the refrigerator before he collapsed to the floor. The second gunshot echoed at 8:44 p.m., exactly 1 minute after the first. Suddenly, the kitchen fell silent except for Brent's ragged breathing. Two bodies lay on the floor of the home where they'd all shared thousands of meals together. The smell of gunpowder mixed with the aroma of the family dinner that still sat, half-eaten, on the table. Brent stood frozen, his weapon still drawn, staring at the carnage around him. His mother and brother were both dead. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. The reality of what had just happened crashed over him like a physical blow. With trembling fingers, he dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I just shot my brother. He killed my mom. They're both dead. The operator's voice remained calm despite the shocking information. Sir, are you safe? Is the shooter still a threat? The shooter is my brother. He's dead. I shot him. He shot my mother first. Police and emergency medical services arrived at 8:52 p.m. to find Brent sitting on his front porch, hands visible, weapon secured on the ground beside him. He offered no resistance, as officers secured the scene. Inside the McDuffie home, investigators found 2 bodies, 2 weapons, and the remnants of a family dinner that would never be finished. Share this video to help others recognize when family conflicts turn deadly. Because the warning signs were there, and someone should have seen this coming. As police tape surrounded the Ross Street home, the most complex investigation in Mobile's recent history was just beginning. 3 weeks after the McDuffie family tragedy, a Mobile County grand jury reviewed the evidence and declined to indict Brent McDuffie on any charges. The decision was unanimous. Brent had acted in clear self-defense against a brother who had already committed murder and was actively threatening his life. District Attorney Ashley Rich addressed the media outside the courthouse. While this case represents an absolute tragedy for the McDuffie family, the evidence clearly shows that Brent McDuffie's actions were legally justified. He faced an immediate threat to his life and responded accordingly. Brent McDuffie walked free, but freedom came with a lifetime of trauma. He'd lost his mother and brother in the same night, and his own hand had delivered the fatal shot. No legal vindication could erase that psychological burden. The Mobile community struggled to process what had happened. How had a family that seemed so normal, so integrated into their neighborhood, reached such a devastating conclusion? Church members, neighbors, and local leaders began asking uncomfortable questions about the warning signs they'd missed. This tragedy offers 3 critical life lessons that every family needs to understand. First, favoritism kills families slowly, then suddenly. Tracy McDuffie's preferential treatment of Brent wasn't malicious. She genuinely believed she loved both sons equally. But impact matters more than intention. When parents consistently favor one child over another, they're not just hurting feelings, they're creating psychological wounds that can fester for decades. Children who feel unloved by their parents often struggle with depression, anxiety, and anger management throughout their lives. Brandon's case shows how childhood emotional neglect can evolve into adult rage. Parents must examine their own behavior honestly and ensure their love is demonstrated equally, not just felt equally. Second, mental health crises need intervention, not silence. Brandon's deteriorating mental state was visible to everyone who knew him. His increasing isolation, his bitter comments about family, his inability to maintain steady employment. These weren't character flaws. They were symptoms of untreated depression and psychological distress. Yet the McDuffie family, like many American families, treated mental health as a personal weakness rather than a medical condition. They expected Brandon to toughen up instead of seeking professional help. This attitude cost 3 lives. Third, family conflicts require professional help before they explode. The McDuffie family had been locked in toxic patterns for years. Everyone could see the tension, but no one intervened. Family therapy, conflict mediation, or even honest conversations with trusted friends might have changed the trajectory of this story. Pride prevents many families from seeking help. They worry about appearing weak or airing their problems publicly. But professional counselors are trained to help families communicate effectively and resolve conflicts before they become dangerous. Here's what you can do today to protect your family. Examine your own parenting for signs of favoritism. Ask your children directly if they feel loved equally. Their perception matters more than your intention. Take mental health seriously. If someone in your family shows signs of depression, anxiety, or persistent anger, seek professional help immediately. Don't wait for them to snap out of it. Address family conflicts while they're still manageable. If the same arguments keep recurring, if family members are avoiding each other, if tension is building, get help. Family therapy isn't admission of failure. It's prevention of tragedy. Create safe spaces for honest communication. Regular family meetings, one-on-one time with each child, and professional mediation can prevent small problems from becoming deadly ones. The McDuffie family story didn't have to end this way. With different choices, earlier intervention, and professional help, Tracy, Brandon, and Brent might all be alive and healing today. Subscribe for more true crime stories that could save your family. Because recognizing the warning signs isn't just about solving mysteries. It's about preventing tragedies in your own home.